what happens when companies go through large scale layoffs, downsizing, reorganizing?
People are sort of just going along with it like, okay, this is the new normal now, right?
Maybe there are things other people could do faster, get done quicker if it wasn't me doing them.
Getting emotional with people is just going to turn them against you.
I think a lot of managers in this situation are angry. I think that anger can be detected, and I don't think it helps.
Stay professional, stay present, stay real, and you can be mean and reactive later. Hello, awesome humans.
I'm Chuck.
And I'm Andrew.
And we are the Mindful Business Alliance, and we are committed to making work suck less.
Or as we say, humanizing the workplace.
So today we're going to talk about an uncomfortable topic, which is what happens when companies go through large-scale layoffs, downsizing, reorganizing, and what are some of the key impacts that has on managers. So we'll start out with it like this, Andrew. If you think about your recent coaching sessions with organizational leaders, what is one of the biggest topics that comes up?
Ooh. Gosh, there are so many topics that come up, but let me see. One of the biggest topics that comes up talking about things with organizational leaders is just a general theme of overwhelm. Too many things going on, not enough time. That's the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah. I think about somebody that I've coached recently, and this is not just one person, but I'm thinking of one person in particular. And the company went through one of many reorganizations. And this person, who was already overseeing a team of several dozen people, suddenly was given an additional team of several hundred people to oversee, and then another team. So this one person went from managing one team to managing three teams almost immediately. So what's the impact of this? This is a person who is a high achiever, who's gonna give it their all, and yet it's physically impossible. So he's telling me, yeah, I'm only getting 4 hours of sleep a night, if that, maybe not even 4 hours a night, because I will not fail at this, because that's who I am. And I'm looking at this as the coach, and I'm thinking, you're not going to last if you keep doing this. Like, who could?
Wow. Yeah, so many things there. I mean, this is such a common theme, right? So many people having that kind of experience. And it is bewildering to be the observer of this. Somehow people are sort of just going along with it like, okay, this is the new normal now, right? Like, it's shocking to listen to you.
Yes.
And it's not at all surprising.
Exactly. But I think you said it really well, that it is presumed that this is the new normal and we just all have to deal with this. And so you and I can definitely express a lot of our opinions about, companies shouldn't put people in this situation in the first place. And we definitely have opinions about that. But I would like to take us in some directions that are useful for people who are in that situation, these leaders who were suddenly dealing with multiple workloads in addition to their original one. So let's start out with, what are some of the risks? Like, what could happen if somebody's put in that situation?
All right. So what can happen? Burnout is an obvious one. That comes up pretty quickly for me there. I would also say the risk is important things get overlooked, mistakes happen. Another risk would be that they are no longer able to actually lead their people, so they lose their people. There's a first view for coming up for me. What about for you? What would you say is some risks?
Yeah, well, I can riff off the last one. I think team members might also be overwhelmed and they might want to leave. But I think that one of the biggest risks is these managers are often looking for the exit because they don't want to stay in the situation, and they may not they might not have a way out.
Right.
This one person I'm talking about, he went to his manager, his boss, and said, I can't physically accomplish this. I'm going to do my best, but I can't physically do this. And you need to find some other people to manage these other teams soon. And the manager's like, you're doing great. It's never been better. And we're going to do our best, which probably wasn't true. Like, I don't know that they were actually trying to get relief for this person, because they were, my client was performing well. And
That leader,
eventually, yeah,
sorry to jump in, that
yeah,
leader has picked up a book in an airport. That's my analogy though. They've read a book that says you need to show your appreciation for your team. You need to pat them on the back. You need to acknowledge them. That's what that sounds like to
right.
me. I'm sorry if I'm being
Yes.
cynical, but it's like, yeah, if you don't believe it, don't say it. That's
Yeah, I'm going to put you in this impossible situation, and my approach, my strategy is just going to be to praise the heck out of you, and hope you don't actually fall over from the strain.
right.
Right.
Because then I would need to
Absolutely.
find someone else who can
Right.
not fall over for
Or
a while.
let's get you some yoga classes, and
I was
right.
just thinking,
Yeah.
meditation for you, sir.
Exactly.
Okay.
If you only meditated enough, you'd be able
If
to
you,
handle 4 hours of sleep a night. Yeah, totally.
yes. And we could get you some apps to help you with breathing exercises. All right. So yeah, Chuck. So there's some obvious risks there, potential risks, potential fallout, and I'm
Mm,
sure there's others that we haven't named. Um, what do we do about this? Like, if I'm a leader going into this, and sadly, as we both know, it is more and more common at the moment, and yeah, we could have a big dream that one day that wouldn't be the case. But for the people that we're working with today, or people who are listening to this, knowing that they're going into something similar, like where should we be pointing people?
yeah.
What do we know from the work we've done so far?
Well, so I don't want to slap a happy face on it, because it
Mm,
does. The situation sucks, and there might be opportunities. So, just as an example, most people are not working to their maximum efficiency. That's Most managers aren't, most team members aren't. Most people are probably spending time doing things that are not the best use of their time. So, I think for managers in this situation to really look at, I can't do everything. What needs to be prioritized? What are the things I like? The question that in our world of coaching often comes up, like, what's the best use of me?
mm,
As opposed to other people. Maybe there are things other people are better suited to, or maybe there are things other people could do faster, get done quicker if it wasn't me doing them. So there is a prioritization dance, I think, that's part of this.
yeah, which sparks another thought for me around, let's not pretend it isn't happening. Let's actually have a real conversation about it. I think
Yeah.
this could also go a long way. It doesn't change the circumstances, but it's going to change the relationship people have to them if we're not pretending that this is fine, if we're not pretending that this is okay, but rather having a frank conversation about it to say, this is going to come up. We've got a hard few weeks or months ahead or whatever. Let's have a conversation about what's needed, and to sort of blend in with what you were saying. What can be parked? Let's get some ideas in the space and so on. But I think having a frank conversation about it rather than pretending it's not happening.
Yeah. And that would be for the conversation the manager would have with their team, saying, I'm not happy about this either. This is not an ideal situation. And let's see what we can do with it. Let's make the
Mm,
most of
mm,
this, right?
yes.
Maybe there's some learning opportunities for all of us here. But also to have the frank conversation with upper management. Like, I think it's legitimate for a person in that situation to say, here are the things that are not going to get done. because we don't have enough staff
Mm.
to do them. You know, I or here are all the things that we are expected to do. Here's my recommendation for priorities, and anything below that may be on the chopping block, may not get done.
Mm.
I think it's legitimate to do that.
I think you're quite right. And so this is two things, right? So one is prioritization, and the other one is, I think we could call it frankness, mindful
Mm-hmm.
conversations. Let's be
Mm-hmm.
real.
Yeah.
Recently, it's making me think of that conversation you and I had about a company who had asked us to come and help them. And I think the title was Keep the Morale High, which sounds good in theory, but this is an organization that was letting people go, but was giving them 6 months notice of them being let go because they needed their expertise to be transitioned to those who are staying
Mm-hmm.
behind.
Mm-hmm.
And the request was to help us keep morale high. I don't think this is a good use of, I certainly don't think it's a good use of coaches. I think it's putting coaches in a very
Yeah.
ethically challenging situation. But it's also just not a frank or real conversation to be having with the people. How could you expect morale to stay high at a time when people are losing their livelihoods? A frank conversation would be more, this is going to hurt. This is perhaps going to be difficult for many of you. Bring some compassion to this conversation.
Mm.
And we're gonna be looking for help to transition this business out. That's obviously going to feel a little strange. And what do you need from us? How can we support you in that? That would be a frank, mindful conversation.
Yeah. Well, and where you're pointing also is how do we make the environment healthier for everyone involved? Because if you, for example, you're dealing with this situation where everybody's suddenly squeezed and you have team members whose behavior is toxic, maybe they are backbiting or bullying, or they're trying to be heroes and they silo and withhold information from other people. None of that makes anything better.
Right.
So I think that's also a moment for leaders to look at what are the immediate steps I can take to make the environment more supportive for all the individuals who are affected.
Something else that's going to be really important in those kind of situations is leveraging the way we're using time, right? So
Yeah.
using practical time management strategies like the Pomodoro technique, helping people to stay productive, avoid burnout, working at specific focused intervals, taking regular breaks. One of the things that I know you and I see a lot in our coaching work is when people are this overwhelmed with this many tasks and this many, even multiple roles, they're not taking a break because every moment feels like a lost productivity time.
Mm.
But we also know taking regular breaks is going to mean that we can actually be more productive over time. And this is super, super important.
Yeah, and the other thing that regular breaks can help us with, I think a lot of times when people are panicked, they resort to multitasking, which most of the research is showing that multitasking, if it's even real, is not the most productive use of people's time. So just being aware of that and trying to avoid the that situation where you force yourself into multitasking, take those regular breaks, be intentional about what you're doing. Short sprints are often better. Just managing attention levels, and that's really what we're talking about when we're talking about time management, is managing your attention levels.
Yeah.
And as you said, breaks are so important. What I
Yes.
also know, and from coaching people on this, that when people don't give themselves breaks at a healthy pace, they subconsciously will rebel. Like, instead of taking, a 10-minute break here, 15-minute break here, they might just like, pop on Netflix and watch and, binge an entire series in a night just because they have such a need to rebel against the circumstances. So the
Mhm.
breaks can help a lot to avoid some of that unhealthy behavior.
Yeah. And this ties in with some of the things we were saying before around being supportive to one another, having open conversations, being mindful, like design these things together, have those conversations with the people around you so that
Hmm.
you're not doing this without anybody understanding why you're doing it.
Right. Yeah. So
Yeah.
then we get to opportunities to advocate for the team. And some of that is also those difficult conversations with upper management. Like, I'm worried about the level of strain and stress that this is creating for the team. I'm worried that if we don't give people some relief, they will leave, or worse, because there is worse than leaving.
Mm.
So I think it's useful to also have those conversations and take a stand, not just for yourself, because that's important, but for the team as well.
Yeah, I think it's important for the team to feel seen and heard in that way. It's also important to do this in a way that is constructive
Mm,
and well thought out. Doesn't need to be immensely complicated, but it does need to be free of emotion. I think one of the things that we also see
mm,
happen when people are struggling with these kind of things is naturally the cortisol level goes up, stress levels go up. Our response to situations tends to be quicker and from a stressful place rather than from a resourceful place. So being mindful not to bring emotion into this sharing of essentially of data,
yeah.
advocating for people's needs, letting your senior management know what's going on. You may or may not get positive responses to this, but presenting them with the data in a way that is clear and free of emotion. Getting emotional with people is just going to turn them against you.
I'm really glad you're mentioning the emotional aspect, because I think a lot of managers in this situation are angry, and rightfully so. But I think that anger can be detected, and I don't think it helps. So
Agreed.
I would underscore your point about, like, bring some spreadsheets to the conversation and use data to show why your team needs some solutions.
It's important to be realistic here as well. This may not work. It may not actually change anything. You may not get any of the things that you're seeking. But what it will do is it will show your team that you're trying. It will show them
Yeah.
that you are advocating for them. And that is really the piece that is important here, that they can stay connected to you and trusting of you, that you are looking
Yeah.
out for them.
They need to know that you're standing up for them. And I also think it's not the healthiest dynamic for a manager in this situation to demonize upper management, because I've seen that happen too,
Mm.
right? So it's not going to reflect well on you if you're like, those bastards in the C-suite, and it's going to make you look bad and combative, and it will be counterproductive to your image.
Yeah. Well, it's back to the being emotional thing. That is emotional kind
Yeah.
of language. It's understandable, but it isn't necessary or appropriate. I think
Yeah.
it's stay professional, stay present, stay real, and you can be mean and reactive later. But in the workspace, keep it where it needs to be. Okay.
The other thing that I think is, and I want to be careful how I say this, because I don't, again, these situations at their core are not good, and I don't want to encourage them. And I think one of the things that does show up in some of these situations is opportunities for innovation. So sometimes having having a challenge, having extra stress, can force people to come up with new innovative solutions that are beneficial to everybody. So that's why I would always add in here a recommendation to be open to innovation, encourage innovation from your team, look for solutions together to make things better, more efficient. It won't solve everything, it won't alleviate a lot of the pressure, but it could end up being to everyone's benefit.
It's one of the things I appreciate about working with you, Chuck. There's an element of you're worried about that coming out wrong, but I think it's so important, and I think it is an opportunity that is really worth underlining, because even if it doesn't go anywhere, there is something very empowering about giving something a try, that sense of working together with other people to see what might be possible. And if it doesn't work, there is still that sense of community in a way, right? Trying
Mm.
something together. And yeah, I appreciate that you you're mindful of that coming out in a way that sounds, I don't know what the word would be for you, but I think it is a great opportunity. I don't think it is something that should be uh, overlooked.
Well, the other thing about innovation is a lot of times the people who are doing it will be the quietest members on the team.
Mm.
So you might not even notice that people are getting creative in their approaches or that they're coming up with new ways to get things done if you're not looking, because they're often not going to be advertising that they're doing it,
Right.
you know. So a lot of times what will happen is your most vocal team members will be the voices of complaint and angst, and that will take a lot of your focus. And the quieter ones might be the ones who are coming up with creative solutions, and
Well,
they
and
may
these,
demand less of your attention.
yes, and I dare say these are the ones who ultimately really will be surviving the squeeze, and they will go on and they will be able to do this in other places too.
So I think that the final thoughts that I'd want to leave our audience with would be: get yourself whatever support you need. Don't go through this alone. Uh, don't try to be a hero. Talk to people, make sure your friends and family understand, and get other support if you need it. Do not try to go through this by yourself, because it's a lot.
Yeah. I think I would just add most people will probably be confronted with something like this at some point. The one thing I would also just offer is if it's going on for too long, be mindful of the potential impact on you and those around you. I think a short visit in this kind of working world is probably okay and manageable, but if you really want to survive the squeeze, make sure that you're not permanently squeezed.
Yeah, I would echo that. Absolutely. Nothing is worth this, you know? And I'm even thinking about, again, my client with the 4 hours of sleep every night. Like, you can't just keep doing
No,
that. At a
no.
certain point, something has to change. And if the job doesn't change, then you might need to change jobs.
Hmm.
And I think that's okay. At a certain point, that's fine.
It's okay. It's okay to push back. We're always at choice. Well, it's been fun having this conversation with you, Chucky.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, as we like to say, stay safe, stay kind,
And stay human.